Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Tonight I want to talk to you about the 200 new laws that took effect in Tennessee as of yesterday. Don't worry, I'm not going to cover all 200 of them. I don't want to talk about 200 bills any more than you want to listen about 200 bills all at one time. But I'm going to cover some of those as well as some of the proposed legislation that didn't become law that should have. Before we get started, let's talk numbers, as in numbers of bills filed every year and passed. Do we really need all these laws? We had 200 bills passed through this year, and there was like 1,500 proposed, which is about average for a legislative year. You have about 1,500. That's an insane amount of legislation. We're talking just state level there. So how do you keep up with them? So how does a legislator, we talked about this on the show last week, I think with Representative Todd. You know, the House is limited to what they can file. They're limited to 15, but of course the Senate has to have a companion bill, and the Senate's not limited. So we have just a huge number. I don't understand how a legislator can actually keep up with more than, maybe 10 or 12 bills in a year. I mean, 15's pushing it, depending on, I guess, how detailed they are. And some of them are minor. Sometimes they just make a minor change to the existing code. But that's a lot to keep up with, because not only do you have to understand the intent of it, or you should understand the intent of it, then you have to be able to go and sell it to your peers. You have to take it. We have a committee system that we use, and the House has several committees that it goes through. The Senate doesn't have as many, but you have to sell it, and this is unfortunate, but because of the sheer volume of bills that go through every year, a lot of times, if you're somebody in the House and you have a good relationship with one of the senators, you've worked with them before, you trust their judgment, whatever, and they bring you a bill and they'll give you a rundown on it, but maybe they don't really go into detail. Now, maybe they're deliberately being deceptive, or maybe they haven't read it that close themselves. They got it from whatever lobbyist was pushing it or whatever group, and they asked you to co-sponsor it. And of course, you asked them to co-sponsor some of your legislation. There's just an awful lot there, okay? And these are laws. The laws we're all going to have to live under. So I think the sheer number is a problem, not just for the legislators, though. So we as the citizens, it's our responsibility, and I cannot recall the exact clause in our state constitution, but it does tell us to instruct our legislators, okay? Let them know what we think should be done, what's right, what's wrong, what we'd like to see enacted, what we'd like to see repealed. I think a lot of things need to be repealed. Well, with so many, it's really kind of hard to keep up. Now, our state, to its credit, we do have a pretty good state website as far as seeing what's been proposed. And then after it's amended, you can see what the amendment says. Most of the committee meetings are taped. So you can see that. You can go back and listen to who said what, who did what. That's very important, because a lot of the real deal on the bills happens in the committees. Usually, though not always, but usually when a bill makes it to the floor, whether it's the House or Senate, 9 times out of 10 that bill's going to pass, because all the fights and arguments, all the hard work has already been done in the committee. But that's a lot to keep up with. So how do you as a citizen keep up with everything? There's no way you're going to keep up with everything. Number one, most people only have so many things they're interested in. Some people are just strictly Second Amendment, maybe you're strictly pro-life, or maybe both of those. Others, they have 3 or 4 different topics that they try to keep up with. And like I say, there are tools for that. There are other groups out there that keep up with these things and will send out reports. They'll let you know when the bills are coming up, when they're in the committee, who needs a phone call, who needs an email, the good, bad, and ugly of the bill, at least in their opinion. And so there are resources out there. And that's, Tennessee Eagle Forum's a good one, Tennessee Stands. If you're talking nullification, of course, you're looking at tncss.weebly.com. So there are resources out there, but that's still just a huge number of bills to keep up with, to even instruct your legislator on. When we get bills passed, so we got 200 bills passed this year, well, how well are they going to be enforced? And then sometimes we have the problem with if the bill is passed and it doesn't even have a good enforcement mechanism. It briefs well, it may sound well, but if it does not have a very descriptive enforcement mechanism and sometimes more importantly, detail which agency is going to enforce it, okay? If there's not somebody watching and paying attention, a lot of times we pass bills that sound good on paper, all the best intentions, but then they're not enforced. And we know we have an issue in general, not just in Tennessee, but across the country, in enforcing some laws. I mean, we see that every day. We see the results of that every day. You have all these people on the street committing violent felonies against others, and next thing you know, slap on the wrist and they're back out. So that's another thing to consider as well. So it's hard for us to keep up and instruct our legislators. It's got to be hard for the legislators to really be well versed on these bills and not just have to take the co-sponsor or the other house's sponsor's word on something and balance that with everything else they're trying to do. So I want to cover some of the bills that were passed this year, and we'll talk about some that probably should have passed. And this is in no certain order. It's not categorized in a certain way. It's just kind of a mix. So House Bill 1600 passed, and it prohibits juvenile offenders convicted of certain crimes from owning a firearm until they turn 25. I think they're probably going to have some constitutional issues with that one, but okay. The crimes include aggravated assault, cruelty to animals, and threats of mass violence, among others. The offenders can petition the court to restore their firearms rights once they turn 19 are at least 1 year removed from their most recent delinquency adjudication and have completed any court sentencing like probation. Another law requires all law enforcement authorities in the state to report the immigration status of any individual to federal immigration officials. This could include reporting knowledge of an alien unlawfully in the country or cooperating with federal authorities in the identification, apprehension, detention, or removal of aliens not lawfully present in the U.S. Now, immigration is a hot button, illegal immigration is a hot button issue right now. Nothing wrong with this law in terms of the thought process if we're going to report it to the federal authorities. Of course, this law is kind of moot right now with the current administration. You can report all you want. They're not going to do anything right now. So that's just something to keep in mind. Hopefully that changes here in the next few months. Hopefully by late January of 2025, we'll actually have somebody to report these people to and have actually something done about it. We'll see. The state can now seek the death penalty for those convicted of aggravated rape of a child. However, the law does not apply to those with intellectual disabilities convicted of the same crime. Juveniles convicted of the offense will be required to be punished as range 2 offenders with a minimum sentence of 25 years in prison. Raping a child, yes, you should absolutely be executed. I would suggest executed in a gruesome way, but we'll settle for executed. I have a question if that includes statutory rape, and this does not tell me that. Well, it says aggravated rape, so I would think aggravated rape is probably not statutory, but hey, I'm not a lawyer, don't know the code. But aggravated rape is obviously a violent situation there. Let me scroll back down here. In response to the rise of artificial intelligence, lawmakers have added a new AI-generated images category to the state's anti-child pornography laws, which includes computer images, computer-generated images, and images created or adapted or modified by artificial intelligence. Other new laws also address education. I'm back up here just a second. On the artificial intelligence, so what this is about is you can take anybody's, if you have a photo of anybody, you could through AI, you can superimpose that onto another body, and it might show somebody as doing something. engaging in sexual activity or posing or whatever, and it's not really them. It was all computer generated. So that's what that's addressing. And there's already been issues with that already. School libraries will have to adjust their collections to comply with the Age Appropriate Materials Act of 2022. All materials in school libraries must be suitable for the age and maturity levels of students who may access the materials and must be consistent with the educational mission of the school. This law is definitely needed. Like if you notice, that law was passed in 2022. We've had trouble apparently getting it enforced. And so without reading the actual code, I can't tell you everything that it does to ensure that, but I can tell you this. Even with the school libraries, you as parents in that district, you need to be involved. You need to know what's going on. And if you hear something, see something, your kids see something that doesn't sound right, you need to report it. It's ridiculous that it seems to be this hard to get all of this stuff out of our schools. Okay, the Back in Blue Act makes it a felony to assault a police officer. Previously, the offense was considered a misdemeanor. The law also increases the minimum sentence from 30 to 60 days and the fine from $5,000 to $10,000. The enhanced penalties created by this legislation send a message that our state values our law enforcement officers and prioritizes their safety while they work to ensure ours. That is from the sponsor, Senator Don White. A second new law will classify violating conditions of a bond release as a Class A misdemeanor, which would allow law enforcement to arrest a person they suspect of violating the conditions. Previously, it was up to the district attorney's office to file a motion and schedule a court hearing. This empowers law enforcement to swiftly address violations of bond release conditions. And it says that it's pivotal for upholding public safety. I guess my only question on that would be person they suspect of violating their conditions. So we'll see how that works out. Next we have, let's slide down here a little bit. Inmates from having their sentence reduced due to good time credits. Inmates will still be able to receive good time credits from the Tennessee Department of Correction, but these credits can only be used towards release eligibility and not for a reduction of the sentence. This legislation reinforces the principle of accountability with our justice system. By restricting the application of good time credits solely to release eligibility, we maintain the integrity of sentencing and uphold public trust. And that was from the sponsor, Senator Lundberg. And I think, we have a problem with people doing serious crimes and not doing enough of their time. Do the crime, you got to do the time. It really kind of undercuts the system when we allow people to do serious crimes to get out early. And it seems like all we end up doing is ensuring they're going to do something else again in the near future. New legislation also harshens the punishment for those who threaten to commit mass violence in school property, making it a felony to do so. People with intellectual disability are exempt from this law. I don't know exactly how they're defining that, but they are exempt. Drivers who are found with their blood alcohol content equal to or higher than 0.15 will be subject to more time in jail. Previously, the requirement was 2 days, but starting on July 1st, the new requirement will be 7 days. I'm not sure what the Secretary of State's blood level was when he was arrested in Bonnaroo a couple years ago. Okay, law requires students to be expelled at least a year for making mass threats. Students who bring a gun to school, assault teachers, are found with drugs, or threaten mass violence against school could face a year's expulsion. School leaders could intervene and make case-by-case changes. The law banning gender-affirming care for transgender youth. This law bans forms of gender-affirming care for minors. It can include banning puberty blockers or home therapy. The law doesn't limit the ban to gender-affirming surgeries or drug prescriptions. It states that trans youth already undergoing gender-affirming care as of July 1st will lose access to it after March 31st, 2024. Let's see, those who have not received the care by July 1st will be unable to start receiving it in the state. Why our state would ever in any way, shape, or form allow kids to transition. Not only is it sick, it's not possible, okay? And our state should in no way, shape, or form be facilitating kids attempting to change their gender. So glad to see that we're apparently not going to continue to do that. Law requires the death penalty be carried out within 30 business days of appeals or post-conviction relief. The law requires people sentenced to death be executed with 30 business days after an appeal and the exhaustion of all available methods of post-conviction relief. It also allows juries to decide whether a person's death sentence should be expedited. Juries would have to unanimously decide to speed up the process, and it's only available for those who've been convicted of first-degree murder. Okay. Law implements fines for not slowing down or moving over for stopped cars with hazard lights on. This law implements fines for drivers who don't move over or slow down for cars stopped with their hazard lights on. If you don't pull over or slow down, you could face a fine of $250 to $500 for the first offense, jail time, and up to $2,500 for more violations. Students can report professors who teach divisive concepts under a new law. The law restricts universities from using state funds for meetings of activities of an organization that endorses or promotes a divisive concept. Students and employees can also file a report if they believe the school violates the law. And the divisive comments, you had a couple years ago, we tried to pass some legislation dealing with the CRT, the critical race theory, and basically what the garbage you have even in our K through 12 is all this anti-American, anti-Western civilization, pro-Marxist, pro-communist, divisive garbage that's in our schools. You know, everything that teaches that basically whites are all racist, America's racist, and America is this and America is that, and basically pushes an anti-American theme, an anti-constitutional theme, I would add. So that law was passed to address that. Let's see. Students and employees can also file a report if they believe the school violated the law. Delta 8 law aims to keep THC products away from children. The law aims to regulate Delta 8 products such as cartridges, gummies, and more. The buying age will be 21 years old, and products sold must be childproof packaging and be without childlike images. Now let's talk about, those are just some of the bills. Like I say, there's 200 bills. I don't think anybody wants to sit here and listen to me go through all of them. And it's not going to happen anyway. So let's talk about some of the bills that should have gotten passed but didn't. I want to start first with a bill that you, the public, would have had an opportunity to vote on. It would have been on the ballot in this upcoming election. And I'm talking about HJR 0038. That was by Representative Reedy in the House. In the Senate version, I don't recall the number, but that's by Senator Stevens in the Senate. And that bill would, currently our Tennessee Constitution allows it says the right to keep and bear arms will not be infringed. However, the state, and this is my paraphrase, may pass legislation to prevent the wearing of arms with a view to reducing crime. And of course, even 2 years after Bruin, when the Supreme Court said that if the restriction didn't exist in 1791, it's not valid today, we still have quite a few restrictions on our books here in Tennessee. This would have been a constitutional amendment to remove those restrictions. All it would say is the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what it would be left with. We no longer have that part about the legislature being allowed to restrict the wearing of arms. Well, it passed through all the legislative hoops. And just, don't you know, at the end, our Secretary of State, as I understand it, made the decision, based on supposedly feedback from somewhere, that the people really didn't like having all of these different amendments to choose from during the election. I mean, it was just so exhaustive, I guess, having to figure out who to vote for on top of now having to figure out how to vote on, more than 3 constitutional amendments. I think that was the limit they made. Now, they're basically saying that you're not intelligent enough to figure out how to vote for more than 3 constitutional amendments, I guess, or the public was too lazy to vote on more than 3 constitutional amendments. Yeah, too lazy or too stupid. Now, a limit of 3 might be a good rule for elected officials or appointed officials at Bonnaroo, okay? Might be a pretty good one. But I don't think that you should limit, I don't think 3 is necessarily a reasonable limit, especially for something that's made it all the way through. So what this means is, since this is not going to be on the ballot, it's going to be, I believe, 2026 before we can actually start the process over. And then you have to pass it in 2, so it'll be like 2030, if I can remember correctly, before we can actually get this on the ballot. No, excuse me, 2030 is next time we can get this thing on the ballot. All because Secretary of State decided, we don't want to have too many choices on there in an election year. That's ridiculous. Some other things that didn't get on, like I said a few minutes ago, Bruin passed almost 2 years ago. You can't carry a long gun in Tennessee if you want to. Like most other states around us can. There's only 4 states in the country, Tennessee being one of them, that you can't carry a long gun in. Now, I personally have no desire to carry one around, but if you want to, you should be able to carry a long gun around. Also, we did not do away, even though Bill Lee tells us we've got constitutional carry in the state of Tennessee, we did not do away with the code, a Tennessee code that says that it's unlawful to carry a weapon, a gun, among other things, with the intent to go armed. Well, there's no other way to carry it than with the intent to go armed. How can that still be on the books if we have constitutional carry? So we still have that problem. Other laws that should have been passed this year, we think that here in Tennessee that surely if somebody is out in our front yard and let's say they're in the process of maybe trying to steal our vehicle, or let's say you have livestock, maybe they're trying to steal some of your livestock, that you cannot use deadly force to protect your property. You have to wait until you feel your life is threatened. That would be the only way you could use deadly force. So that's a law that would have been good to pass. There are some others out there. I know, driver's license. We covered this last week. Representative Barrett in the House and I think Senator Hensley had the legislation, and this has to do with voting. He had the legislation that on the driver's licenses in Tennessee would make it very clear that the person that has that license is not a citizen and therefore not entitled to vote. Now, understand, we do have people over here. They are not citizens, but let's say they came over, they're legitimate green card holders. I'm not talking about Biden border busters, but I'm talking about legitimate green card holders, visa holders, whatever, that came through here the right way. They're only here temporarily. They get a temporary license right now, but unless you know what you're looking for, and we're not sure that all the people that will be monitoring our elections do know that, you won't recognize that that is temporary, therefore that person is not eligible to vote. This law would have made the print bigger, and it would have made it given distinctive features so that people would know automatically. But we couldn't get that through. That bill didn't pass. Now, that's a bill that in an election year needed to pass. What are some of the other things we couldn't get passed? We couldn't get past that in the event of a future emergency, that the state, either the governor or any agency of the state, could declare your legal occupation is non-essential. We couldn't get that passed. We could not get legislation passed in Tennessee that would prevent these special agent task force from the FBI that come in, and they do work with local law enforcement, but if they become a joint task force agent for a anti-terror task force, remember, the FBI, if you read what they describe as a domestic terrorist today, yeah, it's not the Islamist terrorist, okay, that they seem to be most concerned. They seem to be most concerned about those of us who have traditional values and beliefs, okay, and are not supporters maybe of the current administration. Yeah, remember, the FBI was even spying, sending spies into the Catholic Church, different Catholic churches to, spy on them and see what they were doing. So when you look at everything, you would think that, hey, we might need some way of setting up some protection so that our state law officials, even though our county and our state officials could work with the federal government, yet make sure that the sheriff knew what was going on at all times, okay? And that way, hopefully, there would be none of this abuse by federal agents, as we've had in Tennessee and in other states. We couldn't get that passed. We couldn't get a nullification bill that would push back against any kind of unconstitutional action by the federal government. Now, understand, just in 2021 during COVID, to their credit, surprisingly, but to their credit, both the state House and Senate, and once again, I'm shocked, but Sexton was a House sponsor, McNally was the Senate sponsor, and they said, these are their words, in SJR 9005, passed in October of 21, you can look it up, that the state of Tennessee retains residual sovereignty. And now my paraphrase is that basically anything the federal government does that the state deems overreach, that our state not only has a right, but a responsibility because of their oath to nullify, and oh, by the way, not limited to court action. But that bill, well, in 23, it couldn't even get a second. 24, it got sent to summer study. So there's a lot of bills, good bills, that should have gotten through and didn't get through. And I'm sure, others out there are chomping at the bit and they know some of these, and I don't have a huge list. I know there's more. But understand, now this is an election year. What they do in session is the most important tool to evaluate them by, all right? They'll say anything on the campaign trail, but the test is during the session. Now, a couple of things. There are different organizations that every year they will do an evaluation of all the different legislators' voting records. Some of these organizations do a really good job, some of them not so good. But a few things to keep in mind. Number one, unless it's a single issue group, obviously the TFA is going to do just Second Amendment, okay, or Section 26 of the Tennessee Constitution. So they will have everything on that as far as their evaluation goes. If you have right to life, obviously they're just concerned with pro-life. There's other organizations that will look at several different bills, different categories of bills. But there's probably none of them out there that look at every bill, okay? So you're only getting a partial view when you look at these voting scorecards. And the other thing that looking at voting scorecards will not always tell you is what that person did with that bill, in committee. Because like I said, bills it's make or break in the committees. So a lot of good bills never make it to the floor, all right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. But the other thing is, unless the person that you're evaluating, if they sponsored the bill and they got it all the way through, that's great. Hopefully it remained somewhat intact, still filled the intent of what it was originally filed for. That's always something to look for as well. The other thing is, if you're just looking at a record, you pick a House member, pick a Senate member, and you're just looking at the things they voted for, that's what just made it to the House floor, okay? That doesn't necessarily give you the whole picture of how they voted on other good conservative legislation within the committees, okay? Because a lot of times, like I say, good bills are killed in committee. So it's only going to give you something of a snapshot. And of course, they're only going to list the good bills that they passed. And if you don't follow and keep up with things, you may not know of some of the things that they do in committees to kill other bills. So it's just remember, there are some good sources out there, but that doesn't give you the whole picture. Now, I've noticed one thing this session, and of course it's not really all that different from others in terms of an election year. We've got Governor Lee, who is out endorsing primarily the returning Senate candidates. I think he's endorsed some of the people from the House. He seems to be focusing a lot on the Senate. His big thing is vouchers. And so we know that he's going to support those who support vouchers. Wherever you come down on vouchers, that's one thing to keep in mind. That's one of the things. But just in general, I want you to think about the last few years. We've had Bill Lee in office now since 2019, took office in 2019. What is it that stands out, anything really, really positive, that Governor Lee supported? I mean, he was the guy who was deeming people or encouraging, authorizing, which he didn't really have the authority to do, county officials to deem jobs as non-essential. He's the guy who demonized people for actually going to religious services on Christmas, getting together with their family on Thanksgiving. And so even though Tennessee did not have it as bad as a lot of states, he proved that he really didn't have much respect for our state constitution. Because remember, our state constitution, Article 1, is the Declaration of Rights. And one of the things about the Declaration of Rights, it mentions there and it mentions other places in the Constitution, that those rights are not to be infringed under any circumstances whatever. That they are not subject to the powers of the general government. That these are rights that are set aside. Well, he showed that he didn't have any respect for that. I personally think he's been a very bad governor. I don't know of any real conservative that I've met who thinks Bill Lee did a really good job or is impressed with Governor Lee, okay? You can go on and on. There's a lot of different things to say about him. In my opinion, none of them good. But he's going around endorsing a lot of these senators who are running for re-election. He endorsed Senator Lundberg, Senator Stevens. Let's see, I don't know if he's endorsed Gardenhire. I'm reasonably sure he has. Senator Massey and others, as well as some on the House side. So I would think, as bad a governor as Bill Lee has been, if he's endorsing somebody, that should make you wonder about them right there up front. Is this what I want? Do I want somebody that Bill Lee would endorse? Or do I want somebody that our perverted lieutenant governor, Randy McNally, would endorse? You remember Senator McNally, our lieutenant governor, last year had that little online fling, I guess you could call it, with some much younger homosexual. Embarrassed our whole state. You know, Saturday Night Live did skits on it. And, you know, he wanted to make sure in all that the homosexuals were not mad at him. And he said, look, remember, I opposed legislation that would prevent homosexuals from adopting. Okay. So we've got a pathetic governor, and we got a perverted lieutenant governor. So I would be concerned if the candidate I was considering was endorsing either one of those guys. Now, I talked to you about the different records that you see, voting records, voting scorecards. And like I say, there are some pretty good ones out there. They don't tell you the whole story. If you follow state politics pretty close, you can look at those records and you kind of know, okay, yeah, that's pretty legit. Yeah, that doesn't tell the whole story. Well, the same is true for all those political mailers you get in your box, okay? And I'll tell you what, the more you know, the more you have followed what's going on in this state, especially if you've done it over several years. And I have, okay? I don't claim to know all, but I've followed some things pretty close over the last several years. And then to see these people send out these mailers and some of the things that they say on there, and you're like, man, that is not the whole story. Now, that doesn't mean that the person hasn't done anything good, okay? You can find most legislators up there that'll have done something good, okay? Hey, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? But I just want to give you some examples here of, and like I say, the more you know, the more you just have a hard time believing that mailer when you get it, okay? So I'm going to push this one up here. And look, other people are sending out similar things. You'll have to figure it out for your area. But this is a mailer, and this is one of many, and these are all from the same person. These are all from Senator Stevens, okay? I get these. Now, he just recently became, after the census, the senator of my district. But I know and have known a lot of people in his district before, and I've followed what goes on up there for all these years. So it's not like he's exactly new to me. But I just want to point out a few things here. So, unquestioned conservative record. Unquestioned conservative record. Another one, he says proven conservative. Conservative leaders agree. John Stevens never backs down from protecting our conservative values. Okay. Now, first let me say, since he's only been in my district, or my county's only been in his district since last year, but I've worked with a lot of people in different organizations over the years that he's been the senator of that district. So he's not new to me. I have never seen the word conservative and John Stevens' name in the same sentence. Never heard it, never seen it anywhere except on his mailers. That's the only place I've ever heard it or ever seen it. Let's look at a few other things here. Fighting illegal immigration. Required law enforcement to report illegal aliens to federal authorities. Check. Nothing wrong with that law. It's moot now with the current administration. Not his fault. Got it. Supported deployment of National Guard to the border. Voted to prohibit sanctuary cities. All sounds well and good. Now, of course, it doesn't say on here, and I wouldn't expect it to say on here, voted to provide professional licenses to illegal aliens in 2022. I wouldn't expect him to put that on here, but he did. Now, when he was asked about that, when he came to our first meeting, he acted as if he didn't know that they were illegal. Almost as if he was confused about it or misled or whatever. I don't know. But he did agree to have it repealed. That's good. He did file a bill. I'll give him credit for that. Now, he didn't have a House sponsor, so I don't know how serious he was about getting it repealed, but he didn't have a House sponsor. You've got to have a House sponsor to get a bill repealed. But he did file a bill. Now, on that issue, professional licenses to and this is just being honest, to Kerry Roberts' credit in the Senate, that bill did get repealed. No longer can illegal aliens get professional licenses in Tennessee. And I'm sure that Senator Stevens probably voted for that. Let's see. Fighting crime, okay, yeah. Good on those. No issue there. Fighting Biden's disastrous agenda. Supported conservative fiscal policies to restrain inflation. Now, of course, a lot of these, they don't necessarily reference anything they actually did. They just say they did it. So I don't know about the whole restrain inflation thing. I haven't seen any restrained inflation anywhere, but okay. Opposed Biden's environmental, social, corporate, and governance agenda that is crushing our economy, retirement, and pension funds. He opposed it so well that on our state website, you can go there and you can see the climate action plan from the Biden administration that our state's got on the website. You can see the One Health plan that's on our website. That's the WHO stuff that our state claimed to be fighting, okay? You can see that climate change, if you look on different places in our state website, we're still buying it. And oh, by the way, let's not forget, all that money we gave to Ford was all based on creating electric vehicles, or because fossil fuels were damaging the environment, and that climate change was going to kill us all. So we got to have electric vehicles. And I'm pretty sure he supported that because almost everybody gave money to that, or voted to give money to that. But I don't see how you can do that and then say you're opposing these things that the Biden administration is doing. 100% rating from NRA? Well, okay. Let's remember Harry Reid used to have a high rating from NRA as well. Okay. Supports President Trump. Now, supports President Trump. I guess he supports President Trump, but I don't know. He also gets, and let's see if it's on this other one here, endorsed by Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity, not only do they support amnesty, they're a pro-illegal alien organization, okay? But they're very, very anti-Trump. They were supporting Nikki Haley, okay? So I got to wonder, why are they endorsing him? Maybe it's just for his support of vouchers. I don't know. Let's see. And if first place among Tennessee senators, American Conservative Union. Like I said, those organizations, you got to take all those with a grain of salt. They don't tell the whole story about anybody, okay? But he is endorsed by AFP, all right? You got to wonder about that. Let's see. Pretty much covered that. Agenda. So it's really, here's the thing, if you follow politics and state level, when you get these mailers, you'll have a harder time. You'll be like, you got to be kidding me. He didn't actually put that, or she didn't actually write that, did she? Proven conservative, never backs down. Wow. Yeah. So, and I'm sure all of your senators are sending these things out as well. So you might want to look and see things that are maybe not totally forthright. Obviously, they're not going to put their bad votes on here, but I just think people should know. Let's see, illegal aliens, blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. Christian, husband, father, Sunday school teacher, elder law attorney, proven conservative. I'm not gonna delve into the, whether or not he's a Christian. I will have to ask a couple of questions though. He was the co-sponsor of Farrell Hale's SB 126, which was a bill to basically, it would allow puberty blockers for children from the age of 9 to 17. We're still talking minors here that were going through so-called transition, so-called gender transition. Now, Farrell Hale was the sponsor. I don't know if you saw it going around not long ago. We actually played it on this show before, where Farrell Hale makes it clear that the passage of this law was basically to, I'm trying to remember the correct, basically codify what Vanderbilt and other hospitals were already doing as far as transitioning, okay? So yes, that legislation didn't allow it for for 8-year-olds from birth to 8, but it did allow it from 9 to 17. Now, if you remember, then later on, there was a big blow up. Matt Walsh exposed what was going on, and our Senate fixed it in 2023. They passed it in 2020. How is it, where in the Bible could you ever find any justification for assisting a child to transition from one sex? I don't think there's a chapter in the Bible that gives any kind of blessing to that. So, I don't know. The other thing I would wonder, like I said, you've got Bill Lee that's pushing for him and others. Randy McNally, remember I mentioned it a few minutes ago? We couldn't get him to answer how he voted on the straw poll that they did on Randy McNally in 2023 after he had after his little escapades and after he embarrassed the state. McNally did a little straw poll on whether or not he should step down, just from leadership. Okay, he's in a leadership position. And of course, only 7 people said he should step down. They didn't identify who voted how. But we couldn't get Senator Stevens to tell us how he voted on that straw poll. Okay, now, I don't quite understand that, but okay, he didn't tell us. But considering that a week or 2 ago, Randy McNally, along with some others, were at a fundraiser. They were part of the fundraiser in Stewart County, of all places, for Senator Stevens. I'm guessing Stevens didn't vote for him to step down. That's just a guess. I could be wrong. I don't know. So you just got to wonder. You got to wonder when you see certain people support other people, if that's somebody that you want to support. So anyway, if you don't follow politics a lot and you're just now getting involved and you get all these flyers in the mail, do some homework. Go look on a state website. Dig up their record. If you don't know how to do it, I guarantee you there's somebody in your county party that does. Somebody you probably knows how to look these things up. And you can also, to some degree at least, judge them by who's pushing for it. Okay? I just think real long and hard about anybody Bill Lee is supporting. Hey, broke clock can be right twice a day, but I would think real hard. Okay, well, that is it for tonight. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch our program. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell so you never miss an episode. It really goes a long way to keep us on the air to bringing you this program. We appreciate your support. Check out our radio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, TennesseeInformer.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Also, be sure to catch our 4th of July special, 6 p.m., featuring our guest and friend Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment Center. Guys, this is going to cover the Revolution, Constitution, and beyond. Okay, so it's a pre-recorded show, definitely worth watching, and so I encourage you to watch that this 4th of July, 6 p.m. Join us next. That's before the fireworks, well before the fireworks. Join us next week when our guest will be Danielle Goodrich from East Tennessee Freedom, here to expose how our state is conspiring with the Biden administration to push the climate change hoax. And on Tuesday night, our guest will be Ed LeCompte, State Senate candidate for District 10, challenging incumbent Todd Gardenhire. Hope you'll join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.